Thanks for sticking around here watching Focus on Frisco. I've got the whole not the whole planning department, but I've got the planning department with me today. Katie Kent is joining me, also a planner.
Yes.
Thanks for coming in. I think this is one of the few times that we've had you on, isn't it?
It's been a while.
Yes,
I know.
It has.
So, I try to hide in my office.
Come on, this is the fun stuff. Get to stretch your legs, move out.
It's true.
Katie, thanks for coming by. We, the last time that we recorded Focus on Frisco, we were talking about housing, and we were talking a lot about Frisco Helps, and that was really about some deed restrictive ideas that could help people who are current homeowners that might want to get into a deed restricted situation on their homes. I'm not going to go too far into it.
Yes.
But today we're going to kind of take a little bit of a turn, Katie, and talk about the program that's kind of going on right now with currently deed restricted homeowners.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're talking about like the Peak 1 neighborhoods and things like that.
There's about 170-ish around Town of Frisco right now.
Currently.
Deed restricted units.
Yes.
Currently. Yeah, it includes Peak 1. And then there's some in Boulevard Bend kind of dispersed throughout town.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So just as a quick pause, everything that we talk about today on this, you are going to be getting a letter from Katie.
If you live in one of those units.
If you live in one of those units,
Yep.
which is great because it just kind of solidifies everything that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
But I think this is interesting for people to hear because it really shows the dedication that the town is putting toward housing options for every level of community and every level of citizen that wants to come in and stay here.
Yes, correct.
So let's talk a little bit about it. It's called the Residential Housing Restrictive Covenant.
Yes.
That's a mouthful. How did the covenant come about?
So when a unit becomes deed restricted, it has a covenant tied to it. Generally, in many communities, the community uses one standard covenant. Somehow the town of Frisco historically has used multiple covenants.
Oh.
So even in Peak 1, we have 4 or more different levels of covenants. So depending on your house, you may have a different covenant language than your next door neighbor has.
Interesting.
Yes. But we kind of want to get to a uniformity of covenants.
Why was that? Why the different covenants?
Different developer negotiations.
Gotcha.
Different time periods.
Sure.
So different ideas that they thought would work.
Interesting.
But interestingly, what we found was you could have a 2-bedroom in Peak 1. Maybe you purchased it in 2011, and today if you go to resale it, your special resale calculation formula allows you to make about $4,000 on it. Well, from town perspective and that homeowner, deed restricted housing units should not escalate dramatically in cost.
Right.
We want to keep them so that they are affordable to our local workforce.
Because they stay deed restricted even after you sell them. Yes, that is part of the covenant.
Yes,
okay.
And by keeping that price lower and capped, you are encouraging a new buyer to come in who get their first home.
Right.
And especially for local employees, who we all know is a problem with local housing.
Yeah.
However, we do think maybe $4,000 over the last 8 years is not very much money to make off of your house, considering how the market rates have gone.
Right.
We don't want a steady, guaranteed increase, but we do think the deed restricted units should kind of run parallel to market rate units. As far as when they go up, they can go up. When they go down, they can go down.
Got it.
So we decided that yes, we should take a look at how this covenant's resale value is calculated.
Okay.
And by doing that, we tried to come up with a formula that was more fair to everybody. I also should say this is not mandatory. So any homeowners have the choice to opt into this new covenant.
Okay.
Some of them may love the new maximum resale calculation or other parts of it. Other ones may find it they don't like the way it works for their individual property. But yes, so it's kind of let's try over the time to get everyone uniform and to recognize there has been a problem, and we're trying to fix that problem that people have came to us and that we have seen.
So, and maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't. Why would somebody say no thanks to it? What would be the biggest driver to that?
So all of the current and future, a lot of it depends on the year you bought and the area median incomes, based on the area median incomes when you sell.
Got it.
So there are certain time frames where it's better to keep your old covenant if you're trying to make a little bit of money.
Right.
And the new covenant you may find you don't make any money with, or it could be flip-flopped and you could find you're going to make a little bit of money with the new covenant and no money with your current covenant.
I think I got it.
I know it's very, and again, they're an individual basis. So this isn't something that anyone could just come in the office and say, I want to do this. We actually require them to come in and sit down and have a meeting, and we go over exactly what their current covenant says, because a lot of people aren't even aware of what it is.
Well, I was wondering about that.
Yes, so they sign it when they're closing. They know that's deed restricted, but they don't always understand exactly what they can resell. And a lot of people are very shocked when they go to resell and they're like, wait, I don't make any money, or I only make 0.1%. I've owned it for 8 years.
It should be different.
Correct.
That's fascinating, and I think this will be kind of an eye-opener for some of these people who get your letter.
Yes, it definitely will. But we've had a good amount of interested people already talking to us. The town council had 3 meetings about this, and we did have public participation in it, giving us really good feedback. Some of it we took also, like some good ideas that we incorporated.
I love it.
Yeah, it was a good process.
So one of the things that you did mention was that any of the new deed restricted homes that are coming on the market that are being built, those will all go under this new covenant.
Correct.
Again, to kind of streamline everything and try to get everything as uniform as possible.
And this is the direction town council has decided is the best method to have tied to that deed restricted property.
Gotcha.
Yes, housing helps completely different.
Okay.
Keeping that aside.
Yes.
But if a developer is utilizing our bonus density, so they are building extra units because some of them they're making deed restricted, this will be the covenant that they have to put on the property.
For them,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess the biggest thing that we can stress is that if you are currently living in a deed restricted house or unit or something like that, this is really, they're reaching out to you on this. And if you have questions about when you get the letter or what we're talking about today, this is when you do need to go into town hall and talk to you guys about it.
Yes.
Everybody else, you can just know that you've gotten some information on it, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, and anybody's welcome to deed restrict their property. Usually they have a reason they want to. And people don't just voluntarily offer it up. But it could apply to anybody, especially developers. Also, it's really important for new people who are currently renting and want to get into the home ownership. They want to be aware of what those deed restricted units and covenants say, so that they're not going to buy one and then in a few years go to resell it and finding that they didn't understand the covenant.
So here's a question actually about that. If the current covenant is what it is, and someone decides to sell it, when the new owner comes in, will they be grandfathered back to the old covenant, or will they be put into the new covenant?
The old covenant is basically voided, and the new covenant is recorded on the property. So everyone for the future of that will always have the new covenant unless it gets modified sometime down the road.
And I think that really broadens who we're talking to today.
Exactly.
As people start to decide if they want to go into a deed restricted unit.
Yes, and it's really important to be aware of what your covenant says. I will give you a couple other things we're changing if we have. You have a minute to hear it.
Sure.
Interestingly, right now, if you live in a deed restricted unit, your covenant, most of the covenants say you have to live in that unit for 7 years and be 65 to retire. We have had multiple deed restricted owners come to us say, I have worked in public service, or I've worked for this type of job, and I actually am encouraged to retire at 55. Can I retire? And if you want to continue to live in your unit, the answer has been no, you actually have to work, because your covenant says you cannot retire till you're 65 years of age, which is interesting. There's good and bad. Everyone's going to have opinions on it.
Sure.
But we did take out 65 years of age. The town of Frisco decided we don't want to tell you what year and age you have to be to retire. If you want to remain in your unit, you do have to live there 7 years before you retire, but you can retire when you're ready to retire.
That is great.
I think that's a really nice thing. The town council is really supportive of it. I mean, there's so many fields out there, emergency services and things where they do. It's when their benefits kick in is before 65.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably, and again, maybe not, but I think that's probably a relief to a lot of people that go, okay, now in this beautiful area, I can kick back and relax.
Exactly. And they have to have lived there 7 years, so we're not providing retirement housing for somebody moving to the county or moving to the town.
Exactly.
They still, they're established in the community.
Yeah.
But you don't have to push them to keep working when they could retire.
Yes.
So,
well, I think that's
nice.
great. I do. I think that's great. Are there any other ones that that you think would be interesting to highlight, or is it?
We went a lot different than the standard county covenants.
Okay.
Kind of a little bit different take on different things that they have. The retirement is a different one, removing an age. Another big one is that we have decided, so try to keep this really basic. If you live in a house that's 100% area median income, meaning you can only sell it at a certain price to a buyer who makes no more than 100% area median income,
Okay.
AMI. So we have found that over time, people are having a lot of concerns where if you make up to 100% AMI, you really can't afford a 100% AMI house because that doesn't take into account childcare, car loans, educational loans,
Right.
many of these financial burdens that people carry that they, especially young families, young couples, when they're trying to get into home ownership. So what we've decided that would make sense would be, let's go ahead and open it up for 20 days or 30 days when it's listed to the 100% AMI. But if that seller cannot find a qualified buyer in 30 days, they're actually allowed to open it up to by AMI of 20% higher.
Wow.
And that really helps the buyer and the seller.
Yeah.
It's not really pro and con for one or the other. We understand that it's hard if you have loans, educational loans, car loans, to be able to afford that 100% AMI, so you can make 120% AMI and then buy 100% AMI
Wow.
house. Yeah, a lot of like back and forth with numbers.
Right.
But it is a nice thing.
Yeah.
And then capital improvements, most of our covenants don't allow capital improvements. So if you want to put in energy efficient solar panels, you're not going to get your money out
doesn't
of
matter.
it. The resale is still
Interesting.
capped without it. And
Right.
we are encouraging those in the new covenants.
Awesome.
Yes, we are really happy. I mean, general, especially neighborhoods, you want to keep any house up.
Yes.
And if you put money into your house, like putting on solar panels, you kind of expect to get a little bit of a return.
I would think.
And so we are encouraging those capital improvements to come back on their resale value.
Very broad thinking.
Yeah, we like it.
Right?
The council was really supportive of a lot of it, and it was great to have them come to an approval at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's good. We'll see who opts into it.
And you know,
So-
maybe you and I can talk it, in 6 months to
Yeah.
a year and say, okay, after we talked, what did happen?
And it will be an interesting thing
And
to
it will.
analyze.
Yeah.
for sure.
And again, it sounds like a lot of it is really going to be very specific. If
Yes.
it works for you, depending on your covenant, because they are so different.
Correct. Yeah. And no one's required to do it.
Yeah.
And there's no deadline. So we're not saying you
Okay.
have to apply by the end of the year. It's a open-ended. Anytime you want to apply for this, even if it's 2 years down the road, we'll take your application and get you into the new covenant.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So really the big thing that you just have to do is give a call over to Town Hall and set
Yes.
up that appointment, because it is, it sounds like from Katie that you stated that it's a process. You guys
Yes.
aren't just saying, great, sign on the dotted line, we're
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
Yeah.
We could do that,
Right.
but it's not, this is a home. This is your investment.
Yeah.
You need to understand what you have and what you could have.
Well, I
So-
think that's great, and thank you for your
Yes.
knowledge on it. I think that's very helpful. So be looking in the mail. You're going to be, for those of you who are one of the deed restricted owners, you're going to be getting a notice, so you can take a look at it, and that could be the really kind of push to get you into Town Hall and take a look and talk to the staff over there.
You got it.
Great.
Thank you.
Katie, thanks for coming on today.
Yes.
It was good to see you.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Town of Frisco, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. It's been great to see you all again. We've got a nice autumn coming up. I will certainly want to thank Katie and Susan for joining me, Brad for helping us put all this together, and all of you for being here and watching, and we look forward to hearing some input from you as always. On behalf of the Town of Frisco, I'm Shannon Fallon, and we'll see you again next month.